most interesting thing about this cave is we had this brilliant idea. We drilled the cave, we sprayed this beautiful stuff out here, and for whatever strange reason, it never got cold in here. It doesn't feel really cold in here right now, right? Because we don't have the AC on. This is the only cave in California that has to be air conditioned because we have natural geothermal activity happening underneath us, and this gets warm all by itself anyway. It's pretty crazy. Well, when Mr. Graff and Phil Woodward decided to do this, they were like, why is it not getting cold? And we actually had to call a geologist in to help us understand. So it's a trade-off, right? So I heard somebody talking about San Andreas Fault when you first got in. The San Andreas Fault has defined what Chalone is, okay? So we got a lot of geothermal activity. The Chalone, the Pinnacles Peak, is an ancient volcano. San Andreas Fault's running right underneath this. It's a transverse fault, so it's forcing, yeah, there you go. It's forcing that ancient seabed, which is limestone, to the surface. And so we don't have just a little bit of limestone, we have a lot. We have a light alluvial soil on the top, a little bit of decomposed granite, but about 2-3 feet in, you start getting big boulders, and then at some point down, it's a solid plate, it's a solid fused piece of limestone. So we're not just stressing the vines from the top and drip watering, we have to irrigate, but we're stressing them from bottom too, to the point where, you know, a 40-year-old vine can be deceptively shallow roots, right? And then they're competing with each other this way, and so therefore any energy that's left for those vines is they're eking it out into the fruit, and that's why we have such intense fruit. It's like, you know, wherever you go throughout the world, whether it be Burgundy or there's limestone in Argentina, there's limestone in California, all over, it's a prize soil to want to grow a very muscular style of wine, whatever you're producing. So
when the roots get out, they have to go sideways. It's like hitting granite water.
No, they're hitting a fused piece of limestone. So they're finding their way around these big giant boulders, but at some point, it's like a solid plate of limestone. And the interesting thing is that the limestone, you pour water and it drips right through it, it doesn't retain any water. So that's why we have the drip water. This place is so unique because we have our own power lines that we line the hillside with. I mean, these guys that started this winery were original cowboys, you know, and we have our own water source. So we have a well down at the bottom of the hill that is infinitely filled by the Salinas River. And so we use a lot of electricity to pump the water up onto 4 reservoirs up here, and we use that to drip water.
How do you generate the electricity?
So it's so we have our own power lines up that we've lined the hillside with that are connect down to the valley floor. So it's a little bit cheaper, and but it's a revenue stream that we never thought we would have back in the day. Everything that's been done up here is because they were possessed by how delicious and amazing the wine is. So it's like we needed water, because back in the day they used to truck water up, which is kind of silly, right? And they used to use generators. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. So all of these things were things that they needed to close the loop on because they wanted to continue making wine up here because the wine is so good. But now, in present day, they're actually, now that we're an operating company, there are additional revenue streams that we never thought we'd have. The National Park is up here, they pay metered water and metered power, and anybody that lives up here pays us for water and power. So
is it worthwhile for you to put in solar?
Yeah, we've been talking about that. We have an old airstrip that Mr. Graff used to fly himself up on, and it's a perfect flat area that we might be able to move to solar and have our own usage. Maybe we won't change the meter power because that's good revenue, but for our own use, we'll do solar, you know. But yeah, so this is the cave that gets warm all by itself, but it's a cool kind of cave, and we'll be doing winemaker dinners down here. And any questions about?
When was the cave done?
80, 85?
The cave?
Yeah, 85.
84, 85.
Yeah.
85 was the vintage that got hot.
Yeah, this place is pretty crazy. So our first vintage of 1960 was made in that chicken coop, and we'll point it out to you when we get back in the truck. and they used dry ice, generator, and it was Richard Graff, and our first winemaker was a guy by the name of what was his? You don't know? Rodney Strong. Rodney Strong was Rodney Strong was our first winemaker, and Rodney was a very successful choreographer. And Richard went to Harvard and has a degree in music. Who does that? Richard Graff does that. And they were friendly. And so when it came time to make some vino, Rodney Strong was our first winemaker up here. So,
what kind of choreographer makes enough money to afford an airstrip?
Rodney Strong and his wife were very successful choreographers and dancers themselves.
I mean, Richard Graff, he was the choreographer.
No, he studied music at Harvard, and he was a music major. Brilliant guy, you know. He was in the Navy too, I think, right?
But how did he make his fortune to be able to afford it?
Oh, to buy Chalone, he borrowed money from his mom, and over time paid it back. This is California's first winery to ever go public. Yeah, and the deal was back in those days. It was, you got to be part of an elite club, and we only sold wine to shareholders. So that was like part of being in the wine club, right? Because you could get your access to Chalone wine. We didn't have, a wholesale marketplace, that kind of thing. The only way you could get wine is if you were a shareholder.